Hello there, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I hope everybody is doing relatively well in this month of July. I have another installment of the teacher series for you today. It was so fun. I reconnected with a friend that I met during the master's kind of summer. So when you get your Montessori AMI diploma, it's the year, or you break it up in 3 summers, but then there's a few summer courses that you take to complete your master's degree. And I met this wonderful woman during that summer, and we connected over music and Portland, Oregon. And I just remember thinking she was so great and had such a beautiful spirit. And long story short, we have reconnected, and she is my guest on today's episode. Kathryn Castillo is on this episode on another installment of the teacher series. I'm so happy that she agreed to come on. We get into a lot of interesting things, and we really dive deep into the spiritual preparedness of the adult, something of high interest to me. So I hope you enjoy. I have a fun announcement. I have been working hard on revamping the All Things Montessori website. So now if you go to allthingsmontessoripodcast.com, we have a new website. You can subscribe to us. I'm getting better at sending out newsletters. There's been a lot going on, but on this new website, we have a blog. You can listen to every episode. You can contact us easily and just read a little bit more about All Things Montessori. So I welcome any visits to the website, and thanks so much. I want to give a big shout out to our Patreon community, as well as our entire All Things Montessori community. The listenership and the support is truly, it's just sort of mind-blowing to me, and I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you to everybody who has supported All Things Montessori, just either from the beginning or as long as you've been listening. The support means so much to me, and I love putting out this content for everyone. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to head on over to our Patreon page, you can check it out, see if it's something you're interested in. And if you're not interested in it, no worries. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Sapling Supply. I had the pleasure to sit down with Sapling Supply for a really fun interview. Go check it out if you haven't. It's all about Sapling Supply and about being a Montessori dad. It's fantastic. And of course, you can get 10% off site-wide using our promo code ATM10 and enjoy this next installment of the teacher series with Kathryn Castillo. Well, I'm so excited today to talk to a friend that I haven't talked to in a really long time. And we were lucky enough to do our graduate summer program together at Loyola. I'm here with Kathryn Castillo, and I'm so excited to have you here.
It's very nice to talk to you. Yeah,
so I'm going to jump right in and ask what your Montessori story is. What brought you to Montessori? It's always usually a big roller coaster of how we got there. So
yeah, I've listened to some of your other episodes, and I love that you asked this question. And I had never heard it said that way, your Montessori story. It's so fun to say.
Yeah.
So my Montessori story definitely started my senior year of high school, actually. I was in a class called Theory of Knowledge. And it was the first time in my life that I really remember being asked big questions. Like, why are you here? Like, what makes you unique? Just questions. And I remember sitting there at those big science tables, wondering why no one had asked me those questions before, or if they had, why I didn't hear them. And in that moment, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher so that I could ask big questions at an earlier age.
Wow.
And so I got my undergrad in elementary education, and in my senior year did my student teaching in a 5th grade classroom in a public school. And I really felt my soul starting to get sucked out very quickly.
Sure.
It wasn't right for me. It wasn't what I was wanting to do. And so the next year I found a job as an assistant in a preschool, because that was the only place I could find that was looking at the whole child, the emotional development, the social development, the intellectual development, all of it. And that's what I wanted. So I did that for a year, and that was fine. And then my husband and I decided to move to Portland, Oregon. We were in Illinois at the time, and it was a complete adventure. we drove out there and I had a job interview lined up at a Montessori school, but no
Okay.
jobs. And we didn't have a place to live.
I love it.
But on our drive out, the day before we got in Portland, we found a place to live. And I had my job interview at a Montessori school because that name had just floated around enough when I was searching for alternative schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a job interview at Sunstone Montessori School. And I felt like I basically just got a lesson in Montessori in my job interview.
Amazing.
And was offered the position. And so I worked in a 3 to 6 classroom as an assistant for a year. But I was also given the keys to the school. I was in charge of unlocking the building in the mornings.
Oh, wow.
And so I was the first one, and I'd turn on the lights, get the heat on in the wintertime. And I would always peer into the upper elementary classroom for a while. I would just gaze in for a while and just knew that that's where I wanted to be.
Mm.
And so after being an assistant for a year, I went to Montessori Northwest, which was in Portland. It was way too much of a coincidence not to go for it.
Of course.
And did the elementary training just because I've always known that that's my place.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year, moved home to Kansas City with my husband. It's home for both of us.
Nice.
And I work at Clay Platte Montessori School. Mm. It's on 10 acres.
Oh,
it's
wow.
Beautiful. There's a creek that runs through. It's just on kind of this little back road. And I grew up actually just a few minutes from the school. And I used to always ask my parents to drive me on that road because it felt like it was the back way home.
Wow. That's so profound. And how long have you been there? How long have you been at that school?
I'm in my 5th year at Clay Platte.
Wow. So you went right from training to that school. Okay.
Yep. And that's where I've been. So that's my experience.
Wow. Wow. Well, you had experience before training. I had a few friends that, were assistants in classrooms or had been in Montessori classrooms before. And I was always so jealous because I was experiencing it all for the first time. So my brain was just constantly like, oh my gosh. One thing I want to latch onto that I love what you said. I love that the thought of asking big questions is what prompted you on this journey, especially for elementary, because that's really what it's all about is, evoking that sense of wonder. Like, I wonder, or like, I want to learn more about that, or just finding their own place in the world. So that is an amazing story.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share it.
Yes, I love it. So, okay. So you've been at the school for 5 years. How was your transition after, we had that fun little summer in Baltimore? I remember I was with all the Portland kids. You guys were so fun. But I remember all of the people in my cohort at WMI were all together. And then I was just singled out alone with all the people from the Northwest, which I loved. It was awesome.
Yes. So the transition from that summer at Loyola to Clay Platte, it felt quick. I had time to prepare some materials. I had some time to settle in.
Yeah.
But it really felt like right into it pretty much. Mm-hmm. And I started in lower elementary. I did my first 4 years in lower elementary.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted to at least do a cycle in lower world to start with, just to grow up with them into upper elementary. And so that's what I've been able to do. I just stayed a year longer than I thought I would in lower L.
Oh, that's super fun. Do you have some of the kids that you had in lower L in your upper L? Oh my gosh.
I sure do. Long-term relationship.
Oh yeah. I love that. You're sort of getting almost like a 6 to 12 experience because you're watching them. That's fantastic.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, to some extent. And the thing that I also forget, I've always been very aware that I am watching them grow.
Yes.
And they are also watching me grow.
Yeah, that's very true. Oh, man. So in your transition in the lower elementary for those 4 years, how did it go? And also you did a big move too. You moved back home, right? So that's a lot to kind of unpack at the same time. I always think about my first year of teaching. It was kind of a mess, but it was so beautiful at the same time because I felt like I was just learning everything for the first time. in a way, it's like you're in training and it's perfect and beautiful and it's this lovely experience. And then I feel like you get thrown in the classroom and it's like off to the races.
Absolutely. I feel very grateful for the head of school that I've worked for. I have always really felt the gift of autonomy to figure out how to do it, but also
Nice.
support at the same time. So I really feel like I've been given the gift to find my way, but that's also had its challenges. I didn't have other people right next to me to look to or ask for help from. Even now, I really feel like I am seeking a mentor or multiple mentors.
Totally.
Because I feel like I'm at that place now where how do I keep going up? How do I keep pushing through? How do I keep going? Really, in the way that I know I want to and know that I can.
Mm-hmm. So are you the only elementary classroom at your school?
There's also lower elementary.
But now you're, so you don't have an adolescent program, I'm guessing.
We do. No, we do actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But you're the only upper L.
Right. So there's no one, doing the exact same work that I
see.
am.
So you're the bridge between this very important link, right? You get them right after lower elementary, and then you're preparing them for adolescence. And upper elementary, oh my gosh, I was so fortunate to work with a couple upper elementary students. It was actually virtually, but I was helping out a few families and did a little learning pod, and it was so much fun because I had predominantly worked in lower L. I had a couple 9 and 10-year-olds, but I never really got to see it go all the way to 12. And upper elementary students, they can just do a lot of stuff that 6-year-olds just can't.
Yes. And I'm still learning that. I'm still very much learning that. What can you do? What are you capable of? How far can you go?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool chunk of elementary. I think it's so beautiful when they first come in the classroom, they're just so excited, so overwhelmed and going all over the place. But to watch them, refine their skills and get to upper L, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
So one more question about your school, because I'm so curious. You're on 10 acres. So do you have a farm model for adolescents?
Yes, we have a farm school.
Oh my gosh, stop. That is amazing.
Yes, we have a farm school. And just recently, they actually became their own entity.
Okay, cool.
And I don't have a ton of details about that, but
no, it's all right. I was just curious.
Yeah. Yes. So there are animals that they tend to. There's a garden,
Nice.
and they have a market and their economy.
Yeah, they're doing it. Oh, that is so cool. It's so wonderful for your elementary students to be able to see that next step. That's really neat.
And they're eager.
Oh,
they're so eager.
I bet they are. So diving a little bit into, the deeper levels of Montessori, we talk about this idea. I don't even know if it's an idea, but we talk about the preparedness of the adult, the spiritual preparedness, how to be prepared for this really important work. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that because I personally have had my ups and downs with it. Specifically, for me, it was patience, but also putting my own needs really to the side every single time. It's easy to do a lot of the time, but there's some days where it's like, oh my goodness, it's so hard. I think that is the most important and one of the hardest components of Montessori work.
I agree. I agree. And when Montessori talks about the idea of a cosmic task, of every part of the universe having something to do, and they do it. And in doing so, they contribute to the whole. And I feel my cosmic task is developing the spirit and ultimately supporting others to do so as well, or being there alongside their journey.
Yeah.
And so for me, that is what gets me out of bed in the morning to go to work. It's okay, I have another opportunity to just work on being neutral to some extent, but also in that accessing joy, being present, having like cultivating curiosity myself.
Yes.
Feels like the work
Mm-hmm.
to me.
Yeah, I remember I was having trouble just sort of inspiring some work with some of my students. And it didn't really occur to me that I needed to model being a student myself. So when you
Yes.
talk about that curiosity, that eagerness to learn, that love of learning, I mean, they're watching everything you do anyway. So you're so right on about that important aspect of it.
And to some extent, I think it's giving ourselves permission that we can be curious about what we can learn what we want to learn about and share it.
Right.
And I think just kind of feeling that freedom is really important, that truly we can do what we want with our day.
Yeah.
Like, what does a good day look like? What does a good week look like? And that freedom does feel incredible. Like, we speak about like the freedom and responsibility that the children have, but the adult also has a lot of freedom and responsibility.
That's a really, what a cool way to look at it. I think it's hard sometimes with teaching or just being an adult. You get so stuck in your own lane of the things you should do, the things you have to do, all those whatever.
Yes.
And then your story about moving to Portland and not even knowing where to live. I have a similar story when I did that in New York City. Very similar, just moved there on a whim. And I think about that person and I'm just like, wow. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Now I just feel like old and mature and responsible, and, but there's some spontaneity in that I think it's important to remember and to bring in. One of my favorite days, I had a whole plan for what we were going to do. And of course, then something amazing happened and I couldn't do any of it. Yep. There was a fawn in our parking lot and the toddler teacher came in and she was like, there's a baby deer out in the parking lot. You should take the elementary children to go see it. And I said, no, I can't. I have this whole plan. And then I was like, what are you doing? So we spent the whole morning outside and they were singing songs to it. We were at a good distance. It was so beautiful because we had actually just learned Doe a Deer from Sound of Music. And so they were like, the deer will love this song.
Oh my goodness, what timing.
I know. So yeah, just moments like that. Throwing your agenda totally out the window.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Those can be the best days. Those can be the very best days.
So how many children are in your class right now?
At this moment, 12.
Okay. Well, what's the biggest group you've had?
The biggest group I've had was, I think, 22 or 23. It was kind of hovering around those numbers.
In Lower L. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What's the difference between a 12-person classroom and then a 22 or 23?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. So much. But what's also interesting is I had the bigger class when I was a younger teacher. And it felt like a lot. It felt like a lot.
Yeah.
I think that at this point I could feel like I could manage it a bit better. But now with 12, interestingly, I still feel pulled in many directions.
Sure.
And I think some of that has just been kind of trickling from just what this year has been. There was a good part of this year that it was in person and online at the same time. And so it just felt really, really pulled so much of this year. Yeah. And I don't know if I've really stepped out of that mindset that I don't have to be pulled in so many directions anymore, that I can just settle in and be with what's right in front of me and know that that's going to be enough.
Absolutely.
These days I do still feel like, okay, I sit down and I should probably get up and go do something else. And then I should probably go do that. I'm just feeling very pulled right now.
So you were doing kind of like a blended, kind of like a dual thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's really hard. That seems, I mean, look, the whole year was hard. Like nobody had the right answers. Like everything was really challenging. But I do think though, elementary students I think they're more equipped for online learning. They might not like it. None of us particularly loved it, but I feel like they can handle it a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. From what I've seen, I agree with that.
Yeah. So are you back in person now?
Yes, everyone is present.
Wow. So how's that transition been, having everybody back?
It's felt great. It's felt really great. They missed each other.
I bet. That's so, ugh. I mean, the social component is so present in an elementary child. And then
Yeah.
I'm sure though, did they talk to each other online? Like have little, yeah.
Yes. And I mean, that's for sure continuing. It's all about exchanging their username so that
Oh
they
my
can
God.
find each other.
They're so cute. They're so cute. That reminds me of like when I was in middle school and everybody was on like AOL or something. It's like, feels very retro to me.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. So, in terms of lessons, I want to talk to you about kind of like your favorite things to do in the classroom. One thing that was a challenge for me, so I'm curious to know your take on it. It was a challenge, but I was like, this is the coolest thing about the elementary classroom. Like, I've got to get my act together.
Yeah.
The experiments.
Yeah. Like how you experiment with lesson planning, or the experiments that they do?
The experiments that they do. That was such an area that was tough for me. Just to get all the supplies. I would always panic that, something would explode or it would be too much of a mess. So I just wonder how that's going for you. And if you're definitely doing a better job than I did, because it was a mess.
Well, I mean, I don't think you should be too hard on yourself. I'm sure you were doing just fine.
It's hard.
It's so hard. I have lesson planned in so many different ways throughout the years. I've tried so many different things. There are so many times where things are going really well, and yes, we're fully stocked and we have all the supplies. And then there are the weeks that I don't even know how to catch back up.
Sure.
Actually, right now, I am doing a new form of lesson planning. I have never used an annual plan before.
Oh, okay.
So I created an annual plan, like planning for all 30 some weeks of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes from Greg McDonald's.
Okay.
And you plan a certain number of lessons, like from every album, and you plop it in a certain number of times in the year.
Okay.
And then each week you just pull from that annual plan and just plan the specific component of that lesson that you're going to do.
Like what the child is like maybe interested in, or what's calling to them, or from your observations. I see. Okay.
Right. So like you already know in general what you're going to give, but you just fine tune it for the week.
See. How's it working?
So far, so good.
Nice.
So far, so good. It's, I feel like I'm able to be creative in a different way with the plan. I also feel more settled that I'm going to be truly giving cosmic education, that I'm not going to be avoiding the stuff that feels tricky.
It is good to see it. Yes. Oh my gosh. I remember looking at my notes, over the past weeks or something and being like, oh my gosh, I haven't given a biology lesson in 2 weeks, or this child hasn't had a math lesson in, who knows how long.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get there. So I can see how, of course you're observing the children and, things come up that you want to give them lessons, or I'm assuming that's what happens. It's kind of what you're telling me, but you have a backbone of, I'm going to get this stuff in no matter what, because this child is this age and they need this lesson. That's really cool.
It's helped keep me more accountable.
I can see that. Totally. Yeah. That's awesome. So the other thing, like, we should talk about, you're in a year-round program.
Yes.
So how do you guys do that? The school I used to work for, we had a year-round as well. So I'm interested how you guys have yours set up.
So it's all I've ever really known as a guide, but I love it. So we have, roughly speaking, 6 weeks in session and then a week off.
Nice.
Roughly. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's kind of in general what it is, but more time off in the summer. So for June, July, and August, a week off in each of those.
Oh, okay.
And time in August for stuff to get ready again.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. And I actually see some of the very best work happening during the summer session.
How cool.
Which surprised me my first couple years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm just learning more about the seasons and about cycles, it makes sense that summer could be when we're our fullest.
Sure.
Like, it's when we are our most energetic, when we are most social.
And I always thought too that a lot of things come together for children in the spring. Like, like you would just sort of see, like, maybe you gave them a lesson. I mean, it just takes a while sometimes for somebody to get a concept or to really understand what an adverb is or whatever it is.
Right. And spring is a time of blooming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it makes sense that the seeds that we planted would be blooming in the spring.
That's right. Oh, that's a beautiful image. I love that. Yeah. And then, because I think when children go away for summer, because I've never done year round, I do think that it's a time for them to just solidify stuff. That's really, really neat. So do all of the children elect to be in the year round, or is it sort of, do you have the same group the whole time?
Yep. It's just the way it is. It's just the way the school is.
Okay. I see. Yeah. Okay. Because, some schools have like, you can like choose to be in the summer session or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool. So it's all you've ever known. Yeah. That's so different. Because I think with not different necessarily, but, when you're doing the traditional school year, you do kind of have those milestones like, okay, we got to get to May or, June or whatever.
Yeah.
So it just keeps going.
Yeah. So right. At some point you would need to like wrap it up. Right. And I don't necessarily have that feeling. Right. There are these different places where we really notice where we are. Mm-hmm. And it does feel like we're kind of wrapping things up, but then we get to just keep on going. Mm-hmm. So like there are those moments to pause and reflect and be grateful and like feel our community as it is, because that's the other piece. The community shifts often.
Sure.
And so I think that's always really interesting to really recognize each community before it passes to something else.
Absolutely. Because I mean, one person or a couple people or somebody leaving, I feel like the group's always changing, always.
Yes. And the energy shifts.
It really does. Yeah. So am I remembering this right, that you're a musician?
Yes. I play the piano and the flute.
That's right. I know. Right. I mean, I remember we connected about Portland, and I was pretty sure we connected about music.
Yes.
So being a musician, how fun is it to do the music materials in the Montessori classroom? And do you bring other things alive in the music section? I'm sure you do.
It feels really exciting to watch a child compose a song.
Yes.
I love that. That's just one of my favorite things.
Yeah. It's my favorite. I remember some of my children would just do that as follow-up work. And I was just like, of course you can write a song about, like, I remember I had a student who he was reading a book and he wanted to do some sort of project on it or something. And he asked if he could write a song about it. Why are you asking me? It's the best idea ever.
I trust you.
Yeah, that's so cool. Have you brought your flute in as well and played for them?
I actually have not brought my flute in.
Oh my gosh, you should.
It's probably time for that, isn't it?
Do it. And that's such a fun instrument to do like a whole lesson on. That would be super cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I will do that.
Let me know how it goes. That sounds awesome.
Keep you posted.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, this has been so delightful chatting. It's been so fun.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. I wanted to ask, it's been a tremendously hard year for teachers, but I always think teachers need support all the time. I mean, COVID was just another layer on top of an already really challenging and exhausting job. So I think we always need words of wisdom. So do you have any advice or words for the teachers out there right now?
My advice, or like just what I want to say, is that you are doing very good work and to trust yourself. Each day is unique and you can be present as the energy ebbs and flows. And even if some days all you can do is show up, that's okay. And you are doing good work, and just keep filling up your cup, because the more you are able to nurture yourself, that's when you'll be able to nurture others in the way that you want to.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I love your podcast. You are doing beautiful work. So please keep it up.
Oh, thanks. I will.